Good morning, everybody. Just giving one more minute for people to join us. Okay. Just conscious about the time, so let's start, and hopefully more people can jump in a little bit later. Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar focused on how to access the right market. This is the second webinar of the webinar series of the Efficiency for Access Design Challenge. I am Jackie Garcia, and I'm part of the Efficiency for Access Design Challenge team and the facilitator of this webinar today. As a reminder, these webinars are designed for the participants of the Efficiency for Access Design Challenge, which is an initiative led by Efficiency for Access with support from Engineers Without Borders UK. This webinar is being recorded and the cameras and microphones are disabled, except for those of the main speakers, but you all can use the chat box, and I really encourage you to use the chat box to make any comments or questions for our speakers at any time, and then we will discuss them at the end of the presentation. By now, you may be familiar with the challenge brief and the assessment criteria that the reviewers and judges will use to assess your projects. The series of webinars the Design Challenge is organizing this year focus on those assessment criteria to give you guidance on how to consider those when designing your project. And today's webinar is around the scalability of your project and explores the importance of assessing the market for your product, types of market, identifying the correct market, and how to enter the market. So today we have three guest speakers who are going to talk us through their experience on different markets for different products and the importance of incorporating those considerations in the design of appliances for early stages, as it will be highly important on the feasibility of your project and the success of your business model. Then we will have the presentations from the speakers, some section to ask and answer your questions, and then we will close with a survey of the webinar. So let me introduce our speakers today. Alfredo Baño Leal is a senior energy specialist at the Asian Development Bank, developing sustainable energy operations in the East Asia region. Previously, he worked at Asian Development Bank, or ADB for short, at the Independent Evaluation Department, where he evaluated energy projects and programs. He has over 15 years of experience working on energy infrastructure sector in Europe and Asia. And before joining ADB, he worked for the International Atomic Energy Agency and the World Bank, and worked for an engineering consulting firm in Spain. He's an electromechanical engineer with majors in electricity generation and power systems, and holds an MBA in corporate finance from the IE Business School. Tushar Devidayal founded Devidayal Solar Solutions in 2015 and is the full-time CEO. The company's vision and focus is designing and developing high-quality certified off-grid appliances like solar DC refrigerators, brushless DC fans, or coolers. In previous roles, Tushar has worked in leverage finance in New York City, served in a leadership role in his family-owned agri-input business, and most recently was the India country manager for Arista Life Science, Japan. Tushar is passionate about new battery technology and electric vehicles, and has an MBA from London Business School. Oscar Atkinson has over 8 years of experience as a professional electrical engineer, with more than 4 years specializing in developing renewable energy microgrids across Southeast Asia. Since the founding of Okra Solar in 2016, he has been involved in developing the company's unique mesh grid technology and applying it in remote communities across Cambodia, Philippines, Indonesia, Haiti, and Nigeria. And now, without further ado, Alfredo, The floor is all yours.
Many thanks, Jackie. Are you going to upload the presentation? There you go. Okay. So good morning or good afternoon or evening, everyone, wherever you are based these days. My presentation is about clean cooking. As I understand, there are, in this session of access into markets, we'll be speaking about refrigeration and some solar access, and I'll be doing clean cooking, which I had some previous experience in the past, although I'm not doing much of it now. But I worked in some clean cooking programs in Cambodia back in the day. So I put this picture to start off with, because this is the kind of the idea we have in the developed world about what is clean cooking. You know, a place that doesn't have any fumes, that it's spotless clean, like almost an OR, and that by cooking, we don't have any impact on our health. But that is not happening in many places in the world, and we'll be speaking about it. So next slide, please. Do I have control, or do I need to ask about it? I guess not. Okay.
I keep changing the slides. Just tell me when you want me to change.
Right. So the challenge of clean cooking is that by 2021, by this year, about 1/3 of the world's population still don't have access to clean cooking. Most of them, as you can see in this map, are concentrated in Africa and Asia, Southeast Asia, South Asia countries, whereas America, Western Europe, and Australia, New Zealand, obviously don't have any issue. Developed countries are the darker ones, and the poorer countries usually are the ones that have these problems. You can see Sub-Saharan Africa, only 16% of the population have access to clean cooking. So this is a main problem, and this is going to prevent the SDG 7, the SDG on energy, to be achieved, because it's not possible in 10 years to actually achieve the targets for universal clean cooking. So we're going to be discussing how to come up to with solutions and how to bring them to the market, particularly in those places that are not easy to handle, like, as you know, and probably you have experience with, Asian and African markets. So next one. But before that, I want to perhaps set the stage on why it's so important clean cooking. And I want to make a comparison with the impact of COVID-19. As you probably have been impacted by now in the last 18 months. And as you notice, the world almost stopped turning because of this virus. WHO have reported, as of now, 4.9 million direct deaths attributable to COVID-19, which, you know, out of 7.9 billion, 4.9, it's an important amount, but it could be negligible in the total. I'm not saying those deaths are not important, but if we think about how many people, it's estimated that they die every year by not using clean cooking devices. If you do a click, Jackie, you can see that it's estimated 4 million are dying every year. So if we almost stop the world from turning due to 5 million deaths, why are we not doing much to prevent 4 million people of dying every year? And among those, about 60% are women and girls, because they have more exposure at home to the dirty cooking devices. So this is something to think about, and the importance of this challenge. Next. So when we think about clean cooking, many ideas come to mind, right? So we can think about modern induction stoves, like the one at the bottom of the page. We can think about the traditional butane or propane, the LPGs cooking. We can have, you know, electric pots. We can have parabolic mirrors that concentrate heat from the sun. We can have hybrid models like this one from Philips that is on the top right of the picture, and the traditional biomass stoves that can be improved and become more efficient, but still burning firewood or charcoal. So this is quick picture of what are clean cooking devices, but this is not the challenge. The challenge is how to bring this to the markets that we are thinking about, to, you know, Central Africa, to Myanmar, to, you know, hidden parts in India. How do we go about it? So let's go to the next slide. Now, in order to approach this, we have to think in 4 different dimensions, and they're not separate. We have to think about these dimensions in an integrated manner. So we're going to be thinking about the what first. So click again, Jackie, please. So the what is, which technology are we going to be using? What are the alternatives in the market? Usually the traditional alternatives of having this traditional firewood hole on the ground, or we have, you know, some of these old biomass stoves which produce a lot of smoke. What is the cost of those things? What is their functionality? So from the what, we already have to start thinking, how are we going to be able to bring this to the market and to sell it? We can come up with a perfect technical idea, but that might be something we can use. The next one is the who. The where. Where is this going to be located? Where is our market? Is this market in a remote area without electricity? They only have firewood perhaps, or they only have some dung, cow dung, for example, like in Pakistan, which is very popular. Do we have any supply chains to reach there, perhaps LPGs? Do we have any of it, or what is it that we can use? And this is very important because many of our ideas might not be feasible because there is no availability of resources in that area. And next we have to think about the who. And the who is, what is the income of these people, and also their cultural preferences. In my experience in Cambodia, people were very poor. They could only afford, you know, a $2 or $3 cook stove, and they were very particular about it. They were not willing to buy any design, but only those they were familiar with. That's why some of the cook stoves that were introduced initially by some NGOs were not successful, because the people didn't like them. So it has to be a process of improvement. So until they were able to find the right solution, so people were willing to buy. But and some of you might be thinking, well, if it's very efficient, if it's not producing any smoke, if the impact on health is much better, how come they are not willing to buy it? Well, some studies have been done across some of these regions where they had these interventions. Many people were not willing to buy some of the stoves just because of the impact on their health. They knew about it, but their main concern was not that. The main concern was money, and many of them was also familiarity with the design and cultural preferences. Finally, we have the how. This is more related to your business and your business models. Are you going to have an integrated manufacturing operation in that area? Are you going to be importing them from overseas and just distribute them? How are you going to reach the last mile, all those remote areas that are not reachable by the usual supply chains? Are you going to introduce or partner with local distributors? Are you going to use a different supply chain structure? How are you going to promote them? What is your marketing techniques that you're going to be using? Are you going to be providing which kind of messages? What is just only the health message that I mentioned just now, which seems not very effective? Are you going to be providing some other way of advertising and promoting this new technology and how to bring it to market? So all these 4 considerations, as you can see, are all interrelated. You cannot just think about the technology challenge. You have to think, who is your customer, where is located, and how are you going to reach him or her? Usually her, which are usually the women that are responsible for cooking at home in these parts of the world, and usually the ones that are going to be choosing the cook stove. Now there are many new technologies that 10 years ago were not possible to use. We're starting to see electrical cook stoves with a very low power, about 300 watts, that can be powered already with some solar PV system. We're seeing also hybrid models where you will have some biomass plus electrical base, where you will have some funds to improve the combustion and reduce the smoke. There are many new designs, but that doesn't mean that the technology advancements are going to be accepted by the market. So please, when you think about this, think about across all these 4 dimensions. Otherwise, if you only focus on one of them, likely you're going to find yourself a perfect design that is not going to be bought by or accepted by the market. You're going to have a perfect pot or a perfect cook stove, and nobody's willing to buy it because it's too expensive or because it's not something that they'll see themselves using it. Similarly, maybe you have the consumers willing to buy, but you're not able to bring it to the market because it's too difficult, because the supply chains are not able to reach there, or it's too expensive. Or maybe you're not able to pull off a manufacturing operation. So even though you have the perfect design and you have a market research and those potential consumers are willing to buy, you made a mistake thinking how to manufacture it. You may not have the people in place or the capacity or the resources to make it happen. So as a piece of advice, think across all these 4 dimensions initially, and then it's a matter of trial and error. You will be polishing your design, you will be polishing your business model along the way, and you will be learning by doing. And again, this is not a one for all solution. Every market and every culture is different, and you may have to go for 3 different markets with 3 different solutions. Finally, I want to share a little bit about the experience with the cooking stove program in Cambodia. It lasted around almost 20 years. Large development organizations were involved, including the World Bank, the French Development Agency, NGOs like GERES, which were the ones leading this work. There's been a lot of work. Has been relatively successful in the sense of it was focused mostly on biomass efficient stoves, but it appears that now that the electricity grid is being expanded, people have more access to electricity. They already start accessing as well LPG supply chain markets. Now those biomass stoves are starting to be left for new technologies. And even though it's good at the time, markets evolve, preferences evolve, and in some cases, all that money spent in consultants and designs and development structures around it kind of were, as of now, they're almost wasted, because now the consumers are already moving into something else, which were not related at all with those previous efforts. But in any case, it had to be tried, and that's why the Global Clean Cooking Alliance came to be. And it has been a coordinated effort across many countries to improve the life of many people. But please keep in mind that technology evolves, access to resources evolve, and things change very quickly. And perhaps you have the best cooking device for a particular situation, and 2 years down the road, after electricity arrives, then everybody basically dispose them and go to the new technology. So with that, I finish my presentation. So thanks a lot for your attention, and good luck with this challenge. Thank you. I'll be happy to respond to questions later.
Thank you very much, Alfredo, for this presentation and for sharing your experience with the Cambodia project, etc. Yeah, please, everybody, pop your questions on the chat and we pick them up at the end. And now I want to give the floor to Tushar Devidayal for his presentation.
Hey, thanks so much, Jackie. So yeah, my presentation on scalability and how to access the right market is going to be on solar refrigerators, and largely from my experience in India. If you paid attention to what Alfredo said on the who, what, where, and how, I'll skip to the end of my presentation. But if you I'm going to reiterate a lot of what he said, but instead of a cooking context, maybe on a solar refrigeration context. Next slide, please. So we're Davydale Solar Solutions is a solar refrigeration company. We focus on the manufactured, sale, distribution of productive use solar refrigerators. They're typically meant for micro, right from the 100-liter to the sub 1-ton size. We're based in India. We do work in India and in East Africa. A lot of our cooling solutions are used in markets or end uses such as agriculture, dairy, fishing, veterinary vaccine storage, and other cold chain related issues. Next slide, please. So again, what is the problem that we're addressing? At least in India, when we look at grid connectivity, the government of India claims that 99% of rural households are connected to the grid, but a very small percentage of that have reliable service. When it comes to cold storage, cold chain, you really need 24/7 cooling, because otherwise there's a large problem of spoilage and wastage. So 9% loss of cereal and pulses, 22% loss of fruits and vegetables, 12% loss of meat and animal products, and 30% loss of roots, tubers, and oil seeds. So in India and in a large part of the developing world, lack of affordable, small-scale, DRE-based cold storage solutions limits farmers' options. So basically, farmers are either selling their product at throwaway prices, losing product due to spoilage and wastage, and in both cases, losing on margin. Next slide, please. So, the framework we use is, what is the challenge? What is the problem? What's the intervention? In our case, solar refrigeration or cold chain related intervention, and what's the impact? Whether you use the who, what, how, or if you use this framework, basically you're giving the problem, you're addressing the problem, and then you're going to see if the impact was such that it can be replicated, and then you come into all the other considerations like income, preferences, design, and all that. So I'll give you a few examples of what we've come across with solar refrigerators. Next slide, please. So this was something actually that we implemented. This was implemented under the Efficiency for Access R&D fund. So this was something that was funded by IKEA Foundation and Efficiency for Access. We first went in, our mandate was very simple, was that we wanted to do something on mobile cold chain. We wanted to do it in a vulnerable community, and we wanted it to make sure that it had a farm to fork focus. Now, one of the communities or value chains that we chose was a tribal community in Rajasthan that was picking fruit from the forest. This was a non-timber forest produce. Once they picked this local fruit called sitafal, then they scope it, and they would need to split into the retail market. About 40 kilometers away, there was a town called Udaipur. Now, what was really causing issues was that there was no cold storage, there was no cold transport, and as a result, 90% of this fruit was browning, and then because it was brown, it was fetching a lower price, and about 10% of the fruit was getting spoiled. As part of the intervention, this one was funded by Efficiency for Access. There were 2 solar refrigerators installed on a vehicle that gave them about 400 kilos of carrying capacity. And then 6 more were installed. It's a photograph you see on the left that allowed the women to scope the fruit and then store the frozen fruit. The impact this had was, one, the community suddenly had negotiating power. They could store up to 1 ton of fruit pulp and then negotiate with various buyers, because they didn't have this overarching pressing need to just sell their material before it got spoiled. It would be higher volumes of deals, and as you can see in the middle picture, this just 6 fridges, so about 1 ton of storage, created about 35 seasonal jobs of picking and pulping and scoping. The point is this, that if you really truly address the challenge and then you address it, in a cost-effective, technologically feasible, functional way, and you're creating genuine impact, the solution will be scalable. And what this is something that we found is the case certainly with this use case. So while the pilot was done by donor-funded money with efficiency for access, we have now done a so-called copy and paste across that geography in Rajasthan, which has worked out very, very well for us. And scalability at the commercial level in this case has been proven. Next slide, please. Another one where we looked at intermittency of electricity, food spoilage, was a food truck that was being this was in peri-urban Mumbai, the city that I am in now. And again, there was a food truck. The group of women who were selling the evening and the midday meal had no place to store leftovers, to store food that wasn't selling, or even didn't have the ability to sell cold drinks or water. Because of the solar fridge mounted on the rooftop, the solar panels mounted on the rooftop and the solar fridge, they were able to suddenly, improve, again, reduce spoilage, and then add a product line, which was cold drinks, water, and other soft drinks. So it resulted in an increase in revenues and further livelihoods, because they appointed 1 or 2 more women who got jobs selling the soft drinks. Again, we use the same framework, the challenge, intervention, and impact, making sure that the technology was sound, addressing affordability, functionality, and other concerns. Next slide, please. And so this is actually a carry forward from the first slide, where the first slide was done as a demo, as a pilot, and then this was done on a commercial basis. So again, similar non-timber forest product. Challenge was spoilage, browning of fruit, lower prices, and then solar refrigerators as an intervention. Plug that gap in the cold chain, in the supply chain, the lack of electricity, and we really managed to get it in there just in time for this season, where again we see the impact really rapidly scaling up from 3 tons to 10 tons. If those numbers don't make sense, it's just like an order of 3, 3 times the fruit pulp that is going through that unit every day. And there's more than 600 women involved in plucking the fruit and delivering it to the company's collection center. So in terms of scalability, like again, without being too pedantic, the framework that's really worked for us is overview, challenge, intervention, and impact. And if your intervention creates impact, other things being equal on the technology, functionality, and affordability, it's most likely going to be scalable. So with that, I'll pause here and take Q&A after the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very interesting presentation from another point of view, from the refrigeration point of view. So thank you very much. And yeah, please keep popping your questions on the chat. And now, Oscar, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Jackie, and thanks to the other speakers, Alfredo and Tashara. Good lessons that I think are also echoed a little bit in this presentation too. So we've got a little bit of coherence amongst us without knowing it. So I'll give you a quick background on who I am and what Okra does, just so you kind of know where I'm coming from. So Okra is an Australian technology company, and we manufacture a product called the Okra Pod. And this, which goes along with our software service, allows microgrid developers to set up what are called mesh grids. And we've been operating for about 5 years now. We've worked with partners in Cambodia, Philippines, Indonesia, Nigeria, and Haiti most recently to roll out about 25 mesh grids so far. Next slide, please. I'll just quickly explain what a mesh grid is. So you can think of it simply as a network of interconnected solar home systems. So at each house, there is a solar panel and a battery and our device, and power can be shared as needed between the houses. And what this means is most of the power that gets generated actually gets used there locally at the household. And there's only a fairly small amount of power that goes in between the houses. And what that means is you don't need expensive poles and wires to carry bulk amounts of power all the way from your big battery bank, you see there in the diagram on the left, all the way to the very last house in the village. So we save a lot on the CapEx costs on distribution on the right there, and it's modular as well. So it's easy to add more houses over time and kind of scale those houses up as their energy demand increases. So that's what we do. Next slide, please. We manufacture this device called the Okra Pod there on the left in China, and we package that up with solar panels and batteries, and we sell that to local developers who develop, own and operate microgrids in various countries around the world. And we also provide a software service that supports them to manage their billing and operations and maintenance. So that's Okra in a nutshell. I don't count myself as some kind of like product development and design expert, but I can tell you about what our experience has been in designing and developing a product for the energy access market. And I've pulled out 5 lessons that I think are relevant for this design challenge. Next slide, please. Those are the 5. So the first one is admit your ignorance of the market. I think this is a big learning for me. You really can't design a product without knowing the market deeply. And that's echoed by the other speakers. It might sound obvious, but there are really a lot of products out there in the energy access space that are designed in San Francisco or Berlin. And what tends to happen over and over again, it's a bunch of white guys designing products that don't actually make sense for the people they're designing them for. Next slide. A classic example of this is the Socket, which came out in 2014. It's an energy generating soccer ball, which there was a lot of buzz at the time. It was endorsed by the likes of Bill Gates, Barack Obama, and it ultimately turned out to be a dismal failure because, of course, people don't want to have to kick around a soccer ball for 3 hours every day so that they can have a few hours of light at nighttime. So I say this not to discourage, white guys or people living in Berlin or wherever you're living from designing products for energy access. You should still definitely do it, but you should take it as a given that really you're ignorant of the way that off-grid people live and what they need. And you really need to work hard to correct that ignorance. So next slide. I guess in order of best to worst ways to do that, I've listed having direct and varied field experiences with your end users to understand how are they actually living, what do they actually need. The next best thing is to have a direct and continuous feedback loop from your end users to be getting that information. If you don't have that, the next best thing is to have some level of macro data about your end users. So, X% of women in this country spend Y hours per day collecting firewood, for example. That's macro data. And the last and worst way to design a product is just from first principles. And to be honest, in most of the design challenges that I've seen in the past, a lot of people kind of focus on these bottom two elements as their primary tools. And that is the kind of thinking that ultimately produces designs like that socket, energy generating socket ball. So my challenge to you guys is see if it's at all possible to gather some kind of real data from your end users or proposed end users. Yeah, put your idea in front of them and ask, would you buy this product? And if not, or not only that, ask them, okay, if this is not quite the right product, what do you need? What are the problems you're trying to solve? And look, I understand that that's difficult. So if you can't talk to your end users, try to go one step removed and talk to the people who do talk to your end users, i.e. Companies who are distributing products to the last mile. And that's a fairly uncommon thing to do in a design challenge. Like I said, in my experience, design challenge teams is usually spending the majority of their time just kind of talking amongst themselves about how to solve various technical challenges and not really doing much discovery and understanding of the user. So I actually saw on the website of this design challenge that the majority of you are from universities in countries that actually do have an energy access problem, which is awesome because that means you're already a lot closer to your users than someone in San Francisco. So if anything, yeah, you should definitely be trying to get out there and just trying to get some kind of feedback loop going with your target end users to validate your ideas. So next slide, please. The next lesson is find PMF. PMF stands for product to market fit, which you might have heard of before. It's really the key thing that every startup is trying to find. And the concept is you not only need the right product, you need the right market for it. As Alfredo, as he said before, you can have the best product in the world. If you can't sell it, it's a bad product. And that's what we've found as well. We've developed a product that is really unique in the market, but we've still run into a lot of dead ends in some markets. It might be regulation, it might be low ability to pay. There are multiple reasons why in several markets we haven't had much success, but there are other markets where we have had a lot of success. So these failures are not necessarily telling you that the product is bad, it's just telling you that, okay, it's bad for that market, it's not right for that market. And yeah, I guess the point there is that you're not done when you've finished the design for the product. In fact, you're not even done when you've gotten the first ones out to the field. You're done when you've proving a physical product like an appliance where you have to manufacture and ship. That can take years and years. Next slide, please. So yeah, the third lesson is there's no silver bullet appliance, which again was echoed by the other speakers. There's no one silver bullet appliance that's going to work for everyone in all markets. So don't assume that just because a washing machine saves time or a pressure cooker is cheaper to run, that it means people are going to. And what we've personally found works best as approach is figure out what people are already doing and then enhance it. So what existing machine could an appliance replace? What existing cost are they paying that you could replace? Next slide, please. So I'll just show one example here from Cambodia, which is a sugarcane juicer. So sugarcane juice is a really popular drink in Cambodia. And in off-grid villages, they are running these machines with generators, which is very, very expensive to run. So that is a prime opportunity for innovation, which is driven by a proven local need. And so you can see from the numbers there on the slide that when we went and added our system in and provided cheap, clean electricity, it vastly expanded the profit that this guy was able to get out of this machine, $45 a month, which is a big deal. So that's a good news story, but that doesn't mean that I can take this concept and then just drop it into a random village in Nepal, for example, and make it work. So you need to ask what problem does my user have that they know they have that I can solve with technology. Don't start with, hey, I have this new technology, it's really cool, and then try to adopt it, get people to adopt it. That's backwards. So next slide, please. The fourth lesson is don't underestimate supply chain. Again, Alfredo mentioned this too. Yeah, this is the efficiency for access design challenge. So naturally, you might be placing an emphasis on efficiency, but efficiency is really only one of many factors that makes up a successful product. So you really just have to think about, when you last bought an appliance, how much were you thinking about energy efficiency in your decision? Probably not that much, right? You were probably weighing up things like your upfront cost, how much you trust the supplier, how easy the buying process is. And these things are even more important in remote off-grid areas because incomes are very low and it's incredibly hard to actually get something to and from your home. So how this is going to apply to your design challenge depends on the application, but I would just say that don't assume that you can get a product out there just because it is the best technical solution. Distribution networks for the product are really just as important as the product itself. So I would encourage you guys to think about how you could leverage existing products in the market or existing distribution channels. And next slide, the final lesson there is don't make it IoT if you don't need to. I know that's somewhat ironic coming from a company that literally makes and sells IoT products, but hear me out. There's a big trend here at the moment to add IoT capability, pay-as-you-go capability to every device that goes out into last mile communities. And you have things like IoT cook stove and an IoT IoT blender or various other appliances. So you shouldn't really be adding this capability to products if you can get away with not doing it, because when you add devices that send and receive radio transmissions, that makes both the design and the supply chain really, really complicated because radio transmission devices are heavily regulated in most countries. And depending on the country, if you're trying to import a product that communicates via 2G network, you're going to need a whole host of approvals, tests, certificates. You need to prove that it meets certain standards of what's called EMC or electromagnetic compliance. And technically you do need to do this for every consumer product that you sell, but it's a lot easier to do that for just a simple cook stove than it is for a cook stove with a built-in Wi-Fi chip, for example. It kind of comes back to a general design principle of going people first and then technology second, not the other way around. So those are all the lessons that I've got. Hopefully some of those were useful for you guys, and happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Oscar. Very interesting presentation also, and some takeaways. Okay, so let's see what questions we have here on the chat. And first we have a question from Wainaina Joseph. I think it might be related to Alfredo's presentation. Wainaina is asking, the most challenging factor is cost or income, as for Cambodia, and also here in Kenya. So now, how can you help those who are in those regions to join or enter the market, having that here in Kenya, that we have in Kenya 9 to 10 hours of sunlight?
I'll take the question, Jackie. Well, these are two different questions, I believe. One is about how to help low-income households to be able to afford these products. In my experience, I mean, there is an issue of lack of cash in certain communities. Many operate in a barter way, and they have little cash. So sometimes they don't have those $2 or $3 to purchase, or if the item is a bit more expensive, perhaps $10, they're not able to put together that amount of money in cash. what happens is that they are in need of some sort of microfinancing. And for microfinancing, there are ways of doing it. There's a number of programs worldwide. It comes to mind one that I also was involved some time ago, is called the Power to the Poor, where electricity connections were financed along, I think it was 3 years. So consumers could really pay for the connection fee of $100 along the 3 years for a small fee, and they were able to afford it. For the smaller items, like a $10 item, the distributor, if they have a relationship with the consumers, they might be able to provide that financing. If not, many of these clean cooking programs already involve some financing. But again, this is something that the business model have to incorporate into the design if they find that people are not able to afford it right away. The other question, I'm not sure whether it's related. This is more related to the availability of sunlight and whether you're able to use solar PV or solar concentrated energy. And I'm not sure how to respond to this without more context. Thank you.
Thanks. Wainaina, you want to give more context, so Alfredo or any of the speakers will be able to expand the response on that. Okay, I'll go back to your other question, Wainaina. Does any of you have been working in Kenya or invest in Kenya in your experience, and how you can, if you have any advice or tip to Wainaina in general?
I haven't worked in Kenya before.
Yeah, I haven't worked in Kenya either. Sorry.
Yeah, neither have I. I guess I would say, there's a couple of questions here in the chat that touch on similar themes, I guess, like how can I get started type questions. And I guess I would say that one of the things that distinguishes this space from just how do I start a business selling, laptops or something, is this is a socially minded endeavor. We're trying to improve social outcomes, achieve the SDGs, things like that. So there are a lot of competitions, design competitions. There are a lot of grants, such as this, that offer cash prizes, that offer grant funding to prototype your idea and test it out in this space. And that's something that definitely you should be trying to take advantage of where you can, if you have an idea that you think can scale, just applying for grants. And I know there's definitely a lot of emphasis nowadays on grants, really actively trying to find locally led companies. So trying to find companies in Kenya, made for Kenyans by Kenyans to deploy in Kenya. So I think if you have a solution and you're going out to apply for these different grants, then you've got a strong chance of getting some money to get started.
Thank you, yes. And just to answer some of those questions about financial development and financial challenges, etc. As part of the webinar series, it will be a webinar focused more on affordability and accessibility for those designs that you are developing as part of the criteria that you will have to consider in your designs as as designers. There is another question for Tushar, or is very particular. What is the cost of the 100 liters refrigeration unit from Jyoti?
Yeah, so that ranges from about $600 to $1,100. The reason I say that is, if it's for a more accurate autonomy critical application, like say veterinary vaccine storage, then that would be built in with higher autonomy, greater battery backup, panels, temperature loggers, IoT kind of equipment attached to it. If it's something as simple as a water bottle cooler or something that's used at a retail end, then it'd be the lower end of that range that I indicated.
Thank you, Tushar.
Yeah.
There is another question on from Jyoti for Alfredo on clean cooking. So Jyoti is asking for clean cooking as a challenge, how the access to cleaner technology can be achieved. Do you have any highlights to share here?
Well, this is the topic of the presentation, right? So, I mean, as I said, you have to think about the 4 dimensions and look at your market, look at the resources that you have, supply chains in the area, affordability of the potential consumers, what potential designs, and try to make it and try to fit into that picture. There is no silver bullet, as Oscar mentioned as well. Every solution might be good in one area, might not be good in any other area. So it's something that a very much trial and error proposition. As I mentioned as well in the presentation, the experience in Cambodia over almost 20 years was that it was a continuous improvement and trial and error thing until the market was able to accept one particular design of a biomass stove. They put up with a lot of development money as well. It was not really a commercial operation. It was a lot of development money involved. But at the end of the day, they were able to scale it up. But now many of those are already choosing other solutions because they are available after some years and after electricity arrived in their villages. So there is no silver bullet. You have to think around the 4 dimensions and keep trying. That's the only thing I can say.
Thank you. Yeah, keep trying. There is one more question from Isabella. How do you go to find information about supply chains for rural, hard to access markets? Who would like to take this question?
Yeah, I can jump in and provide a little context there. I guess it is very dependent on the country. There are networks in some countries that just don't exist in others. Some sellers have a particular focus on selling to rural populations, and they have branches, small shops in provincial towns and things like that. There is an example of that in the Philippines, where rural people often are able to get motorbikes and televisions and things like that on finance from a couple of companies that have that focus. Another avenue is MFIs. MFIs, microfinance institutions, are particularly common in Southeast Asia, but do also exist in Africa, that are providing similar things like loans for various purposes, loans for a motorbike, loans for farming equipment, and they're specifically geared to get out to these communities. So they already have, I guess, networks of distribution channels to get out to these communities. So those are 2 avenues that are worth, I guess, exploring. Talking to companies, if you can find an example of a company who is distributing products out to these markets. In the context of solar, there are also multiple providers in various African markets that are doing last mile distribution. The M-Kopa and the Mobisols of the world, who have those vertically integrated distribution channels. So I would recommend just trying to reach out to those companies and trying to get some more information about how they're doing it, depending on the local context that you're specifically trying to find more information about, because it is quite different from country to country.
Thank you, Oscar. We are almost there. It's almost time. We have a few more minutes. So I want to ask each of the speakers today if very briefly, what will be your main suggestion or advice to the students participating in this challenge? Tushar, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I was part of this this Efficiency for Access challenge last year as well, and I worked with a group from University College London, and it was a lot of fun. My advice is I mean, I don't know if have fun is advice, but you will have a lot of fun. But I'm saying, you know, dive deep into it. There's Efficiency for Access will give you a lot of resources. You'll have you know, industry partners, mentors, people to bounce ideas off of, and then obviously there's a prize at the end of it. But it's a good learning process. You know, involve yourself fully and use all the aspects that are available to you as part of this challenge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perhaps I'll add my last 2 cents. I think that for the students to think about, to come up with a solution to this particular challenge, not only for cooking, but also for the other aspects. I think that the most important thing is to have a wide view of the issues. Don't get too focused on something and forget the rest. This has to come, as I mentioned, there are these 4 dimensions that you have to think about all the time. You may have some people in your team willing to do something, but it's important that the team keeps the wide view all the time. And at the end of the day, there is no silver bullet. So try to keep your mind open and try to keep improving always your solution. Don't think that you have, you are always, your opinion is the right one and all the others are wrong. Usually it's the other way around. You have to find a way of getting the optimal solution, which may not be the best, but is the one that may work. So try to keep always your mind open and try to understand what is the need and what is the perception of your potential consumers. Just because you are a very good engineer doesn't mean that your product is going to be bought by somebody else. So just think about that.
Thank you. Oscar, any final remarks briefly?
Oh, just that, yeah, use this opportunity to learn as much as you can. I mean, I wish that I had time now to, you know, spend like just brainstorming and innovating and trying to gather a bunch of information to try and think of new solutions. You know, when you are down the road of like focusing on your thing that you've built, it's very hard to then find the time to go wide and think about all of the possible solutions that could exist. So yeah, as Tushar said, have fun with it, learn as much as you can, try and bring in as many inputs as you can, and yeah, good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all of you to be here today, especially to the speakers, Alfredo, Tushar, and Oscar. We really value your feedback, and we are very keen to hear from all the participants what you think about this webinar, as this will help us improve for future webinars. So we prepare a survey, so you can scan the QR code on your screen or just go to the website underneath, and my colleague Emil has put the link on the chat. Will take only 1 minute, and yeah, thank you very much. At this point, I just want to remind you that recording of this webinar will be available on the Efficiency for Access Design Challenge website in case you want to revisit some of the examples and interesting information you've listened here today. And our next webinar is on Wednesday, 27th of October, and it will focus on the Efficiency for Access efficiency of appliances. You will get the registration link through your academics or on the general workspace on Crowdsolve. And my colleague Emily is sharing the link to Crowdsolve in the chat. If you haven't logged in, please go ahead and explore the new online platform that we are using for the Efficiency for Access Design Challenge this year. Also, and just to end, we have the Efficiency for Access Design Challenge newsletter. If you haven't signed up yet, you can scan the QR code, go to the link under the QR code, or just check the chat link. And yeah, if you have any questions or want to get in touch with us, please send us an email to e4achallenge@est.org.uk. Thank you all, and see you on our next webinar next week.
Hey, thank you guys. Bye.
So yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a good one.